ready?
Yeah.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
He's a great guy.
Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHAL.
Well, good morning. I think it's Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. My least favorite day of the week. I was going to say my most disliked day of the week, but that's going a little too far because I don't actually dislike it. I just don't like it as much as I like other days, and I have no idea why. Anyway, I did make a really, really nice, it's not a cup, like a little thermosy thing of tea today, so I'm excited about that. It's got plenty of honey in it, and so that's really good. Got that right here on the table. Shannon, are we on YouTube this morning? We are live on YouTube this morning. If you go to youtube.com and type in Ross Kaminsky, you can see me in my home studio and my tea thing when I held it up. So go check that out. President Trump is going to Kenosha, Wisconsin today. Ought to be interesting. He apparently will not be meeting with the family of Jacob Blake, in part because it seemed like, I realize all this is political already, so if this sounds a little too sensitive, I don't know what to do about that. But the family seemed to want to make this more political already and more legalistic than the president wanted to get involved with, and I don't blame him for that. When we heard he was thinking about going, I said I thought he should try to meet with that young man's family. But I guess the administration got in touch with them yesterday, wanted to maybe talk with either the young man or his dad on the phone, and they insisted that their lawyer, Benjamin Crump, who you see at almost every one of these situations, and unfortunately that means we're seeing him too much, but Benjamin Crump is the lawyer that all of the police shooting victims are going to, the same way that, you know, every woman who claims to have been sexually assaulted by a famous guy goes to Gloria Allred. So the police shooting victims go to Benjamin Crump. And when Trump wanted to just have a conversation with the family, they insisted that Crump be on the phone call with them, have the lawyer on the phone with them. And Trump said, no, thank you. Instead, Trump spoke with the family's pastor. He said it was a very good conversation, but he didn't speak with the family because they insisted that their lawyer be on the phone call. And I got to say, I'm okay with Trump's choice there. If that's how they're going to play it, then, you know, I just think that's not the purpose. And of course, Democrats, the governor of Wisconsin is a Democrat named Tony Evers. And the mayor of Kenosha, and I'm blanking on that guy's name, not that I really care. Those guys have both said that they don't want Trump to come. The mayor of Kenosha has been pretty aggressive about it. And the father of Jacob Blake, his name is Justin Blake, he also said he doesn't want President Trump to go, but Trump is going. He's going to land in Waukegan, Illinois. He's going to drive up to Kenosha. It's not far. He's going to, according to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, which is the major newspaper in Milwaukee, he's going to tour destroyed buildings and businesses and visit Mary D. Branford High School, where they have an emergency operations center. And I guess this newspaper is quoting Politico with that information. And then at the high school, Trump is going to have a roundtable discussion, maybe with law enforcement, local business owners, but we don't know all the details yet. I would say if I would have one piece of advice to President Trump, it would be just tell your supporters to take it easy while you're there, and generally to take it easy and not start trouble. And I'm not saying that because I think Trump supporters are starting a lot of trouble. Because I don't. Trump supporters are, you know, some of them are getting out there in nonviolent counter protests. One of them was killed by someone who's probably Antifa a couple of days ago. So when I say that Trump should make that statement, it's only so that the media can't accuse him of not making the statement. That's how stupid the world is that we live in right now. But if there's one person that might go do something stupid, but he hears Trump say, "Don't go do something stupid," then there's not much downside in Trump saying it. So he should probably say that. Shouldn't dwell on it. Shouldn't make it sound like it's his people causing a lot of trouble. And he could even put that in there. Look, I know it's not my supporters who are causing trouble here. I know it's Antifa and the radical left, but just in case any counter-protesters have any thoughts, make sure you keep it peaceful. That's all he needs to say. He doesn't need to tell them to stay home either. Just enough that the media can't accuse him of doing nothing. So we'll see how it goes. I'm sure there are plenty of people who are going to want to be there and protest, especially we know what high school he's going to, right? So I'm sure there will be lots of people at that high school to make their either actual displeasure with the president known, or more likely in so many of these cases now, paid agitators. I don't have the story right in front of me now, but the Kenosha police said, I'm going to get the numbers close, right? I won't be dead on, but close. They arrested around 170-something people for rioting and vandalism and things like that. And of that 170, more than 100 were not from Kenosha. They were from 44 other cities. A lot of them were not from nearby. These are professional agitators who come in from wherever. We don't know who pays for their hotel rooms and stuff like that. Most of them look like they don't have a pot to piss in anyway, so I don't know who's funding them. And they show up and cause trouble. So that tells you kind of what's going on there. All right, I want to elaborate a little bit on a comment I made yesterday talking about the Friday and Saturday event I was at it was actually in Beaver Creek. It's normally in Steamboat Springs because it's the Steamboat Institute's annual Freedom Conference. This was the 12th annual Freedom Conference. And they invited me and Mandy to come out and help MC because the deal they had with Eagle County Health in order to make sure they didn't have too many people in any one room was they broke the event up into 3 different sort of meeting room, ballroom kind of places. And Jennifer, who runs the Steamboat Institute, was the MC in one, and Mandy was an MC in another, and I was an MC in a third. So it was an amazing event, and hopefully next year it'll be sort of back to normal and all in one big happy room, and hopefully I'll go back and you can join me. But the Friday night dinner speaker was Heather Mcdonald, and I'm sure you've seen her on TV. I've had her on my show a couple of times. Mandy has had her on her show several times over on KOA in the afternoons. Heather Mcdonald writes for City Journal and is a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. And I'll tell you, this woman is tough as nails, absolutely tough as nails. Now, she's very highly educated. I forget, Yale, Oxford, and a law degree from some other big-name university like that. She's very, very brilliant, and she absolutely takes no prisoners. In a way, I sometimes wonder, in this cancel culture that we've got, how she gets away with it. I'm so proud of her for saying what she says and doing what she does and getting away with it. I don't know whether they're a little more afraid to go after a woman or whether she just seems so completely fearless and won't back down, or maybe the cancel culture people know that the place that she's working, the Manhattan Institute and all that, that they won't buy into any of this stuff and they won't succumb to pressure. But she writes about things. She wrote a book about 3 years ago, very prescient book called The War on Cops. Well before most of us thought there was a significant war on cops. Boy, was she ahead of her time. She saw that coming. Well, because it was already beginning to happen then, and she just saw it more clearly than most of the rest of us did. And she also does an incredible amount of research on actual data, actual statistics related to crime and law enforcement and race issues. And she is one of the great myth busters out there when the liberal left wants to tell you that such and such a problem is caused by cops or misstate crime statistics to make it seem like one particular group is treated very differently than other groups, and therefore it's a manifestation of systemic racism. She just blows up all of those things with facts, not with opinion, with facts. And it is an amazing thing. And within a few days, I think, the Steamboat Institute is going to have available for us videos of all of the speakers there. And I'll make sure you get the links for Heather Mcdonald, for Kim Strassel, for Rick Grinnell, who I had the chance to interview. And I passed along some attendee questions, but also asked a bunch of questions of my own, including Sock Shoe, which made him chuckle. He'd clearly never heard that question before. But let's just stick with Heather Mcdonald for a second, because there were two things that she talked about that I want to just briefly summarize. I am not going to do nearly as good a job as she did, and that's why I'm going to get you the link when I've got it. But two key things that I want to talk about. One is, and they're related, but one is what she calls safetyism. Safetyism, and that is this modern obsession with safety above all. And it is manifested in the reaction to coronavirus. It's not only about that, right? You've seen it for a long time. And I mean, one example, and I'm not saying it's always a bad example, right? Maybe you got a klutzy kid, but kids in bike helmets, adults in bike helmets, right? I can't remember the last time I fell off a bike. And yet, in a lot of places, you've got to wear a bike helmet. Now, they might say, well, it's for your safety. And yeah, you haven't fallen off for a long time. But if you did and you hit your head, something bad could happen to you. Yeah, okay, I'll make that decision. How about, and I bet this has happened to many of you, how about walking down a sidewalk or even a hiking trail in some natural place, in the mountains, in a state park, in a county open space, walking an outside trail, and you're outside, and there are very few people around, so rationally, you are not wearing a mask, because it's not rational to wear a mask in that situation, and somebody walked past you coming from the other direction, maybe two people, couple out for a walk, and maybe they're from Boulder, and they're wearing masks outdoors with almost nobody around, and you're on this path that's 8 feet wide, and you move to one side of the path, and the other people walk by you on the other side of the path, and you're 8 feet from them. Not that it really matters, because this being near each other is so fleeting. And they give you this look, or they walk by and you hear this snide comment like, what the hell? And you know what they're talking about is that you're not wearing a mask. And that's their safetyism coming into play. This obsession with safety. And you start thinking about, and we're going to talk more about this over the course of the show. I've got some other data for you, but we talked a little bit about it yesterday with the new CDC data that shows that apparently only 6% of people who passed away from coronavirus had no comorbidities. Now, I'm not saying that the 94% who died with coronavirus in their system, I'm not saying that none of those people's deaths was proximally caused by coronavirus. It is going too far to say that only 6% of deaths were caused by coronavirus, right? Because you can have obesity or you can have a heart problem and live for a lot longer. And so a lot of those people could have lived a lot longer, but they were weak. And Kristen told me she was watching or listening to Fox News yesterday. She thinks it may have been Neil Cavuto talking, who said that coronavirus in that sense was like a hurricane, or that came through, not the strongest hurricane, but a strong enough hurricane that if trees in its path were weakened, they were old, they had been damaged by something previously, those trees fell. The trees that didn't have anything wrong with them to begin with didn't fall. It's that kind of thing. I thought that was an interesting analogy. But when you learn that 94% of people who died with coronavirus had pre-existing conditions, and most of them, the vast majority of them, were over the age of 65, and most of them actually over 75, it goes to show that the paranoia about keeping schools closed, for example, is just a incredibly terrible, destructive, not just to kids, but destructive to kids, destructive to parents, destructive to the economy, destructive to everything, example of safetyism. Society, a feminization of our country. And she was talking about when are there going to be some real men out there who basically say, I'm not doing this, right? I get that the whole mask wearing thing is a little trickier because the state has the force of potentially issuing you a citation or putting you on trial or putting you in jail if you don't wear a mask, which makes the decision a little harder. And also, and she did note this, and I note this as well, I think it's a good idea to wear a mask in a public indoor space near other people. At the supermarket, at Home Depot, places like that. Wear a mask. I don't know for sure that it helps, but I know for sure that it makes a lot of these other people, especially if you're near someone older, feel a little better and feel like you're a good citizen. There's no downside to wearing a mask in that situation. But the rest of it, masks outdoors, these people wearing masks, walking by themselves outdoors in a car, what is that about? And Heather Mcdonald talked about the feminization of America, and especially through higher education. She talked about how the population of colleges these days, teachers, students, all of it, majority female now. And it is turning America's young men into sissy boys. I don't think she used that term. And I get that it's very much not politically correct. And starting quite a few years ago, well before all of this current upheaval, we were told that boys and girls are basically the same. And remember, the education system really turned on boys and said, oh, well, boys have had advantages all these years. We're just going to focus on girls now. And boys were really, not physically, but educationally, let's say, abused for many, many years. And now at the higher education level, it's happening still. It was an incredible thing, and I'll get you the link when I've got it. We'll be right back. You know what? When you actually, let me tell you about my own personal experience. This is a silly thing to talk about, really, but I'm going to. Okay, so last night, like almost all of you,